Hey guys, Altenew educators are getting together to give thanks to our heroes during the COVID-19 pandemic. We really appreciate everything that you guys do in keeping us going safe and healthy. I'm Amber from NotableInk.com. Let's get started. I finally got my hands on Altenew Gradient Cardstock sets, and these sell out so quickly, you guys, so get them now before they're gone. And I have most of the sets. The one that I'm missing is Red Cosmos, but we're going to do some creating with these and also the Essential Black and White paper pack today. So my first thought was almost like a paint chip card design. So, like the paint chips that you get from the store. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I have strips of the cardstocks of the Seashore Gradient Cardstock, and it's about 1 1/16 is the width of each of those. And I'm going to stamp Flower Vine on these, just straight across it. I don't have them glued together or anything. Then I decided that I wanted a rough edge. So I tore off one end. I like the way that looks. So I'm going to stack each one with that so that I can tear them. I don't want them to be exactly the same, but I want them roughly the same size. And I'm tearing off a scant 1/4 inch from each of the ends of those. So you can see that here. Now that looked a little bit strange to me, so what I decided to do was tear off the top of the top strip, the bottom of the bottom strip, and then the left edge of all of them. But I want to keep the inside edge of each of these a clean line because I don't want to tear away too much of my stamped image. So I initially grabbed hello there because it fit perfectly right in that space, and then realized I needed to change this to a giving thanks sentiment. So I grabbed thankful for you every day. And what I've done is I've stamped that on a piece of white cardstock, and then I just cut up the sentiment so that I could stack it and make it fit in that space. I did pop up those gradient strips of cardstock so that it would cast a shadow and add a little bit more depth. And also I added a little bit of space in between each of those for a little more character to the image. Here I have the Summer Afternoon Gradient Cardstock set, Fantasy Floral die set, and also the Summer Afternoon markers. And so I'm going to cut these with my Mini Blossom die cutting machine, and you're only going to see me cut one of each of these, but I end up cutting this 3 times, and I was able to get 3 out of each one of these pieces of cardstock, so that was perfect. So I'm just going to flick the die cut just to get those little bits and pieces out, but of course you can also use a craft pick as well. And then I'll just match these up, and then I'm going to add some artist marker coloring to one of the flowers. So I have these Summer Afternoon artist markers here, so those coordinate perfectly with these papers, and I'm just adding a little bit of depth to this layer. I'm adding some shadow coming out from the center of the flower, and then where I feel like there would be creases or wrinkles in the petals. And I'll add just a little bit of color to the bottom layer with the buttercream marker, so that's the lightest marker. If I were to do this again, there's a couple things I would probably do differently. I would probably use darker markers, so the same Summer Afternoon, but I basically matched the color of the marker with the color of the paper. I would go one marker up, and just to add more depth to the layers. Rather than the same color. And you'll see this when I do the ink smushing as well. I would do that differently too. So for this one, I'm going to add some darker colors, especially in those little crevices. After this flower is assembled, I'll come back in and add even darker colors to create even more depth. On the bottom, there's no color. On the top is the artist marker version, and I'll show this again after this ink smushed version. So here again, I'm matching up the color of the ink with the color of the cardstock. And like I said, if I were to do this again, I would go one level up with the inks and add darker, because as I was doing this, it looked dark enough, like this looks dark enough, but once it dries back, because right now the paper is wet with the ink smushing, and it dries back quite a bit. So you can go darker with your colors and get more depth. So I'm just putting the ink directly onto my glass mat and then spraying a little bit of water and just dipping it in. Here you can see the difference, and of course we're going to add some foam squares in between the first and the second layer, and also I'm going to do that in between the second and third layer as well. Having some of the layers popped up will create greater dimension by casting shadows onto the layer below it. So that's a great technique to use. So here you can see I've come in with my darker marker and I'm just adding more depth to this one with artist marker. So I'm going to keep all three of these flowers as they are, and I'm going to put them all in the same card, which might be a little strange, but if you think about a floral arrangement, usually the flowers in the back are further away and those aren't as bright and they aren't as detailed. And here I'm just cutting the leaves from Just Green cardstock, which is from the Green Meadows Gradient Cardstock. I'll just pop those out. I have a piece of black and white striped paper from the Black and White Essentials paper pack, and I'll get the card arranged. Now, I'm stamping a sentiment in Just Green ink, and I'm just stamping it right in between those two black lines, and I love how that looks. So here you can see the difference between those three flowers. I put the darkest one in front, the lightest one all the way in the back, and you can see the difference in the texture here and also the increased depth with the darkest markers. I'm totally loving these bright gradient cardstocks against the black and white paper, and of course I'm not going to waste that extra piece. I'll use it in this next card. I have a sheet of sweet leaf paper, which is from the Green Meadows Gradient Cardstock, and this thanks sentiment is from Halftone Circle Stamp and Die Bundle. I'm going to go ahead and die cut it, and I love this because you're going to see the sweet leaf around it instead of the white, which is going to be perfect to coordinate. This is the emerald color from the Seashores Gradient Cardstock set, and I have a strip of sweet leaf. Of course, the black and white paper is our leftovers from our last card, so you know I love a twofer and being able to use all of those scraps right away rather than just sticking them back in the package. I'm going to line up these two strips, and then I will pop up my sentiment. And I also have this little leftover floral that you see on the left hand side there. I'll trim this off from the back. That little floral, the 3D die, has not been released yet. Once it is, you will see I have in a video how I created that, but it was sitting on my desk and it matched so perfectly with these colored cardstocks that I felt like I needed to use it. So this card is all about leftovers. I hope you enjoyed these ideas for your gradient cardstocks and will give them a try. Do join us on the Altenew Educator Giving Thanks to Heroes blog hop and linky party. A link to my blog post will be down below with more details. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and support your local heroes. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and ringing that bell so you don't miss any new inspiration. Here's a couple more videos for you before you leave, and I'll see you real soon.